It's just the cleanest way to go toe-to-toe with them. And the other thing about the Eldrazi deck, you're not going to see more than 2, maybe 3 basic lands in the deck. So the odds are high that your second and definitely third Path to Exile are actually just Swords to Plowshares, and they don't gain your opponent life.
All right, well, we are underway with game number 1 here. John is going to start out with an Endless One. For 2, cast off Eye of Ugin.
Yeah, it's a play that the deck makes fairly common. You generally don't want to run more than 1 Endless One out for 2, just because the second one is going to be more valuable as a 3/3 or a 4/4.
So if you had a group of Endless Ones, you don't just frogmite them all.
I played a mirror match where my opponent just played 3 Endless Ones on turn 1, and I won very easily. Where if any of them was a 4/4 or a 6/6, the game becomes a much less certain matter.
Well, I suppose if you assume your opponent's also playing Eldrazi, which is not a terrible assumption, all he has to do then is make a 3/3 Endless One, and then he's got you.
Exactly. Those chip shots don't matter a ton in a deck with no red damage spells. There's no lightning bolts to close the game out. There's no reach.
So here's the early onslaught. A crash in for 2 from Endless One. Eldrazi Displacer will be cast next to it. So you go back to Michael Majors. He had a turn 1 Aether Vial.
Yep, that's exactly how Merfolk wants to start the game. Starting on his 3rd turn, he'll be able to start doing 2 things a turn. Also, when it gets to 2, he can start Harbinger of the Tides without tapping 4 lands. Huge tempo swing in these combat mirrors.
Majors will go ahead and fetch up an island. And the first play is going to be Silvergill Adept that reveals Curse Catcher for Michael.
Wonder what he's going to do with this vial this turn.
It is set to 1. Now, Curse Catcher doesn't have very many targets for the Eldrazi deck.
No, unlikely to counter a spell, but it is an additional body in these damage races when you start deploying your lords. That adds up. When Curse Catcher starts attacking for 3 itself, it's a real player.
You know, I was surprised the Eldrazi never got a lord.
It does. It has Ruination Guide.
Okay, it has Ruination Guide plus Tide Drifter. So you can do it in 2 parts. But there's no just like Eldrazi Lord.
Yeah, I mean the Eldrazi Lords are 15 mana legendary creatures, as it were. They don't really care about the tribal elements.
Swing from Pellman. He'll offer a trade of the Endless One for Silvergill Adept. We'll see if Michael will take it. He has another option as well, too.
Yeah, you could also flash in the Curse Catcher, double block the Displacer. And I actually like this attack from John a lot. That Endless One is only going to get worse as the game progresses, as the Merfolk creatures start to be 3 toughness creatures as more lords are deployed into the table.
So note about Eldrazi Displacer's ability. John cannot pay for it using Eye of Ugin, of course. But this is actually the only ability in the deck that when you use Eldrazi Temple for 2 mana, actually can be spent for 2 mana for Eldrazi Displacer because of how Eldrazi Temple reads.
Yep, it can be used to activate abilities. Notably, Eldrazi Temple works with about nothing else. You can't use it to pay the trigger on Eldrazi Obligator.
Yeah.
You can't use it to return a Worldbreaker from your graveyard.
That one I definitely can be confusing. But yeah, it does not work to return a Worldbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
Fetch here for Basic Island for John. I have to admit, you love the Basic Island that John has selected for his deck. I know that you always like to look at the basic lands people are playing.
If you're gonna play 1 basic land in your deck, get a nice one. I mean, come on. At the last Pro Tour I played, I only had 4 Unhinged Islands. You know what I did? I paid $10 for a 5th.
I had most of my Amulet Bloom deck foiled, but because I didn't want to have it, you had to have a pattern. You had to keep a certain number of cards non-foiled, so it wasn't just only the Summer Blooms weren't foiled. So I intentionally didn't foil the land, and I just would use a draft common land for it. I thought you'd really appreciate that.
I mean, if you're going to go for a land that isn't a nice land, you should find the ugliest land you possibly can. I recommend 6th edition. It's white bordered. It has a disaster of a set symbol, and the art is generally not very good.
Play post-combat for John was a copy of Eldrazi Sky Spawner. On Michael's side, he actually chose to block nothing. And then just put that Curse Catcher in on end step. His turn, Michael will go ahead and make Merfolk Marrow Regery. So if Michael's not blocking and attempting to trade, then is he trying to race here? It seems crazy that he could do it, but Merfolk does have a lot of damage out of nowhere sometimes.
The plan is either to race. Oh, of course, John does have an island now. Alternatively, Majors can just be building up to enough lords where he sits back on his creatures and starts making more profitable blocks.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? So as Merfolk, you can either race your opponent, or you're right, you actually could, if you have enough, play the complete defensive game, attack with no one, just block, and actually try to trade your way through these Eldrazi.
And inevitably, a Lord of Atlantis just makes your Alpha Strike lethal and unblockable.
So yeah, you'd sit there and then 20 him in one move.
Right.
Well, it looks like Michael's going to go for the racing option. So here's Curse Catcher and Silvergill Adept. They'll hit in for 5, so Pellman will go to 13 on the attack. And yeah, Michael's keeping things close. And with an Island Walker, I would hazard that he has lethal next turn.
Absolutely. You also want to get these chip shots in if you don't have lethal, because the Sky Spawner, coupled with the potential Reality Smasher this turn, makes your 12-point life total not feel very safe.
I like these basics again, John, with the basic planes.
I don't even think those are from the same set. Looks like Time Spiral and Ravnica.
It's great.
You just walked up to the land box.
Well, yeah, that's why that's there.
It's true. It's for your decks.
Go start. Hey, do you guys have any basic lands? I could use some.
I actually have a lot of local stores, since they stopped sending out land packs, have had issues keeping basic lands. Store that I work with regularly frequently asks players to bring in basic lands.
Swing with Eldrazi Sky Spawner from John will put Michael down to 10. He then taps and sacrifices that Scion to get a Drowner of Hope into play, netting 2 more of Scions.
Those Scions will matter a lot in this damage race.
Well, remember, he has the interaction right now. It's when he untaps next turn, because Brushland makes colorless. He has the Eldrazi Displacer plus Drowner of Hope interaction, and I know that that's really important for this deck.
Definitely. Notably, Marrow Regery has some interesting text. So that Michael Majors, you will be able to tap them out of attacking, but when Majors casts additional Merfolk, he will be able to untap them to leave them back for blocks.
4th land for Majors. He's at 10. Did not vial anything into play on the end step there.
Which means he's either being sneaky or he has nothing. I would wager it's the first.
We know a Dismember lies in Michael's hand. But at 10 life, he's got to be careful with that card.
Yeah, he has a Path to Exile as well. That one's a little cleaner as the removal.
Here's a second Marrow Regery. He will use the trigger to untap his Mutavault. With 2 Regeries, his spells start becoming free.
Yeah, a little built-in Dark Ritual on your Merfolks.
Can he make lethal this turn? It's interesting.
With the Drowner in play, it seems highly unlikely. The 2 Lords here means that he has 3 3-power creatures, and then the 4-power Silvergill Adept, plus whatever could potentially come in off the Vial. The Mutavault is also a 4-power creature.
Well, if the vialed in let's say a Master of the Pearl Trident, or a Lord of Atlantis, something that gave Island Walk, maybe. So this is, but what Merfolk does here is he'll go to attacks, and now John has to tap things.
Right. The plan is I declare attacks. Once my lethal attackers are in play, before blockers are declared, I could vial in an Island Walk Lord.
Right. So he goes to attacks. John will sacrifice 1 Scion to tap the Silvergill Adept, which is currently a 4/3. Now the danger here, though, is if Michael can't win this turn, you feel like John has to win next turn, because otherwise things will get out of control.
Right. He is able to generate more Scions using the Displacer on the Drowner. Also gets a free chip shot with the Drowner because, well, actually, no. He comes back in tapped when you displace with it.
Yes, it does.
So scratch that idea, but he can at least generate more Scions.
All right, Curse Catcher as a 3/3. The Regery also has a 3/3. Those are going to swing in. Could be some surprise pumps here. And before blocks, Michael will pay 4 life to dismember the Drowner of Hope.
Yeah, at this point, the best thing that John can do with his blockers is trade. Though you could line up the 3/3 against the Lord and the 2/2 against the Curse Catcher, kill the Lord in combat, and then the Curse Catcher will die to state-based effects when the Lord is no longer pumping its toughness.
Well, it's 6.
Oh, right. Never mind. Sorry, there's no Island Walker.
So it's 6 damage right now, and John's just going to go ahead and take it. So he now drops to 7. Can he swing back for lethal? I doubt Majors would have made the attack if he didn't have the counter swing covered.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident that there's a Harbinger of the Tides in Major's hand, which allows him to just return one attacker to John's hand.
Michael's made himself an appealing target here at 6 life. You know, John, if you're at John's side, you can think, hey, I can displace your Regerie, swing, that's 6. So you know something's coming in off the vial.
Right. Either that or Majors is just confident that he can't win this game without trying to get you, and he has made a very strong bluff.
The attack will be from Eldrazi Sky Spawner. Not certain Majors wants to bounce this one with a Harbinger.
No, certainly not in combat. John will just be able to cast it by tapping an island, and he'll have 2 more creatures in play.
So Majors goes to 4. And for John Pellman, he will just pass the turn. This is it. This is interesting.
On NSEP, it'll be interesting to see if Majors vials in this Harbinger. It does give him 4 more power on his next attack.
You mean if he just wants the attacker, that would certainly suggest that Michael's just going to go for the Alpha Strike.
He also has those 2 Mutavaults he can fire up.
It's a lot of damage.
There's 3 blockers in play. Potential to have 4 more creatures than that on Major's side. Any 3 of those would be lethal in conjunction.
And there's not that much that he has to worry about instant speed from the Bant Eldrazi deck. With 4 mana up, what Majors has to play around is a Displacer activation plus a Path to Exile. And that's at instant speed, that's really all he has to fear here.
Mm-hmm. Didn't put anything in at the end step, so we'll see how aggressive Majors gets.
Second Curse Catcher for Michael Majors. And now it looks like he's going to use those Regerie triggers to try to tap out John's blockers.
Yeah, Curse Catcher is often lauded as just the worst card in the Merfolk deck, but when you have 2 Regeries in play, any Merfolk is a player.
Endless One and Scion token will be tapped from the Regerie triggers. This is looking mighty lethal to me right now.
I'm inclined to agree. Only able to fire up 1 Mutavault at this point in time, but that looks to be enough.
So here's Mutavault and the attack getting ready. We have up at the top of the screen, we have a second Regerie.
The other thing about that second Curse Catcher, he now has a Curse Catcher that he played this turn, so if John's plan is to Displacer plus Path to Exile, that second Curse Catcher is just going to sacrifice itself to force spike the path.
If John wanted to make that play, he needed to Path to Exile before the first Curse Catcher resolved.
Right.
Swing with 5 creatures. It's both Regeries, a Mutavault, a Curse Catcher, and a Silvergill Adept. His total swing is for 17.
3 3-power creatures, 2 4-power creatures. You have to deal with the 4s because any 4 plus a 3 is lethal. The trio of 3s is lethal.
So the only way John can deal with do that would be Path plus Displacer activation plus a block, but there's some problems with it. First of all, the Curse Catcher you mentioned. Second of all, John would have to use his fetch land to go down to 6, in which case leaving 2 creatures through is still lethal.
Right, any of the 3s then become lethal. So
now we're looking at fetching and playing 2 path, or playing a maybe 3 Path to Exiles could work here if he had 3.
I think John is just checking, double checking, and triple checking the fact that he's dead. One thing about live play versus Merfolk, it's a lot different than playing Magic online. You don't have to keep reaffirming the fact that a creature is a 3/3 or a 4/4.
It just says it for you.
Right.
If John's hand, and he does have 3 cards, if it is 3 Paths to Exiles, I think he still has game here. But it is not, and we're going to go ahead and go to game 2.
That'd be a heck of a hand. I'd be pretty amazed that 1 did not get deployed earlier in that game.
And Michael Majors really, the game plan we talked about of an army of blockers plus then turning the corner and alpha striking does seem to pay off, and Merfolk is up 1 game to 0.
Definitely.
So we'll go ahead and look at the sideboards for John Pellman. He has 2 copies of Hurkyl's Recall, 3 Relic of Progenitus, 3 Gut Shot, 2 Disenchant, a Path to Exile, 2 Spellskite, and 2 Choke. Now, despite the fact that Merfolk is a mostly blue deck, Choke is traditionally not good against it.
Yeah, part of the issue is that there are Mutavaults and Cavernous Souls that are also always going to untap, and then Major's deck just has 4 Seachrome Coasts, as well as 4 Wanderwine Hub that just are not going to be impacted by Choke at all. It's kind of like a double Stone Rain, except you're bringing it in against a very aggressive deck. That's not really where you want to be.
So if we don't like Choke, is there anything we do like in this matchup? I could see him using the 4th Path to Exile, but outside of that, there's not actually too much I want to board in on John's side.
Yeah, it basically comes down to Path to Exile. There's some argument for bringing in Spellskite just because you know that Majors is on Path to Exiles and on Dismembers, so maybe you want to block for your Eldrazi, but I'm not in love with that. I think I would just be going for the Path to Exile here.
Over for the Fish player on Michael's side, 2 Thalias, an Aethersworn Canonist, 2 Gut Shots, a Dismember, a full set of Hurkyl's Recalls, 3 Spell Pierces, and 2 Phyrexian Unlifes. A lot of these seem to be targeted sideboard cards as well. You see Recall for Affinity, Unlife for Burn. Is there much we really like for the Eldrazi deck?
We have a Dismember that definitely is an all-star here. Just you have to keep them behind on board. The Gut Shot is interesting. I'm curious to see how we'll bring that in. It specifically only really combats the heavy Eldrazi Mimic draws. It was something,
but those are their best draws, right?
Exactly. It was something that I had access to when I was playing Mirrors that I just kind of boarded out my Gut Shots, left them on the sideboard because I just kind of planned on being on pace with them and needing to interact with the bigger creatures. It's possible that Merfolk is only losing by getting run over, in which case you would definitely want the Gut Shots.
All right, we'll go. So game 2 looks to be mostly the same strategies as game 1, each player boarding in 1 extra kill spell, but the idea that both players are trying to crash into each other with the creatures seems to be still the game plan.
This is actually one of the big strengths of the Eldrazi deck. If I wanted to stack my deck against Merfolk with my sideboard, I certainly could come up with cards that are quite impactful. Not necessarily as dramatic as other decks in Modern, but I could definitely have a bunch of Rending Volleys that you can interact with so I can really slow you down. If I want a sideboard that's stacked against Eldrazi, and again, that is the deck that Majors is thinking about the most when he's sleeving up his Reflector Mages in his Modern Merfolk deck, there's really nothing I can put in my sideboard that's oppressively strong against them.
Players are getting ready here for game number 2. So we mentioned our Season 1 schedule. We want to make it out to one of our opens. We're giving away the Kitchen Lynx playmat at each of our opens. So if you haven't seen these are the Star City Games parody creature series. We've seen stuff like Tassiger, the Golden Paw, Hoppin' Rabbit Master. This is the next addition to it, and just in time for Modern, of course. Kitchen Finks. Now in the kitchen, not just the oofs messing around, it's also some cats. You can get this limited edition playmat with entry to any open here on Season 1. Louisville this weekend, we have 3 more events before we make our way to our Season 1 Invitational in Columbus.
I actually like this mat quite a bit better than the original art for Kitchen Finks. Those guys are weird. I like the cats.
Cats, if you ever let cats up on the counter in the kitchen, they just make a mess of things.
I mean, if there's cats in my kitchen, I'm a little upset. I don't particularly like cats. I'm actually allergic to them. But if there's oofs in my kitchen, that's like a serious problem.
Cats do like to knock things off the counter. It's one of those, they'll get up on the counter, they'll be next to something. They just hit it onto the floor.
They're showing their dominance. Cats actually think that they're the master.
Underway for game 2. John starts out with just a Temple Garden. It's going to be Curse Catcher for Michael Majors. Cavern of Souls for a turn 2 Endless 1/2 for Pellman. Now, without any Iavugans or Eldrazi Temples, I'll admit this Bant Eldrazi deck looks rather fair.
This looks like a kind of hand that I would have mulliganed. To my knowledge, John kept on 7, and if he's not playing Eldrazi Land Thought-Knot Seer here, I am quite skeptical of that keep.
2/2 for 2. You don't like how that sizes up against Merfolk?
Sometimes I don't even like playing the 2/2 for 1 with this deck, so I'm not in love with that against anything in the format.
Adarkar Waste on turn 3 for Pellman. It's going to be a copy of Choke, so he has boarded in the Chokes. He will get an island for it as well.
So that's presumably the reason that he kept this hand. I believe that he has evaluated that Choke is more powerful than we stated it was, and he's just casting a Stone Rain to follow up his 2/2.
We'll see if Majors cares. He casts Phantasmal Image, copying Lord of Atlantis. He will swing in for 6. John will go to 14. This is kind of what you were saying where you weren't sure that choke was that good.
I'm going to go ahead and say definitively that Majors does not care.
He lost one island, but John's going to lose his life points.
Whole bunch of them.
No island in play yet for John. He'll play Flooded Strand.
Comically, the choke makes the island even worse for John if he wants to get that in play.
Yeah, choke is actually a double-sided effect. It's just islands don't untap. It's not just your opponent's islands.
Right.
Eldrazi, Endless One on 3 for Pellman.
This is actually making Merfolk look like the unfair deck. Majors paid 1 mana for his 3/3.
Yeah, well, John's actually looking very fair. A 2/2 for 2 into a 3/3 for 3 is no way to play Magic in Modern.
No. Arguably no way to play Magic in Standard.
Yeah, this wouldn't match up well against Siege Rhino either.
No. Reasonable limited start.
And for Majors, here's Silvergill Adept, revealing Silvergill Adept. He'll draw a card. Draws a Mutavault. Major just can take his time.
His non-Curse Catcher attacks are not looking too good on this turn because the Endless Wood would trade with a Lord. Interestingly, the absence of Spreading Seas for Majors is hurting him here, not because John is doing anything to generate with Eldrazi lands, but just because he would rather that John controlled an island.
If John controlled an island, Majors would have a near lethal attack this turn.
Right.
Last game, John did help by getting an island for Majors. Dismember will go ahead and take care of the 3/3 Endless One.
That's a big play.
Right, so now Majors has a board of 3 3/3s and a 4/4 against Pellman's 2/2. That's a swing for 13.
Yes. Makes his attacks suddenly quite a lot better. I like leaving the Lord back here because the problem is if you attack with it and there's a removal spell on the Phantasmal image, then suddenly you're trading your Lord for his 2/2, not where you want to be. Thing about the image, it's dead to anything no matter what happens. May as well send that one in.
So here's the swing then for 6. Just the 2/2 Endless One, not going to make a profitable block without that Path to Exile that you were mentioning.
Right.
And it looks like John does have it. So we'll put the Endless One in front of the Phantasmal image.
The Curse Catcher will, of course, be around to snag the Path to Exile on the Lord.
So if that's the case, this block seems... Okay. He will still lose his Endless One on a chump block then, if this gets countered.
Right.
So what I feel like John may have wanted to do here was Path to Exile the Phantasmal image, because then it dies whether it's countered or not. Trade the Endless One with the Curse Catcher and move on.
I do think that the block here is a misstep, and if I were John, I'd be evaluating what I'm pathing here.
Right. Michael Majors will counter the path with Curse Catcher. And now Endless One. Yeah, now John will lose the Endless One. So yeah, had he done the other way around, blocked the Curse Catcher and path the image, we'd have the same board, but Michael would not have the Phantasmal image in play.
Correct. The Lord worth considerably more than the Curse Catcher.
Hallowed Fountain is the play for John. Now keep in mind, that is an island, so John gets 1 tap out of it.
Has to pay 2 life to ever get any value out of that land.
And here's Thought Not Seer. Path to Exile, Silvergill Adept, Hallowed Fountain. You feel like he has to take Path to Exile here, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Path, Majors will be able to untap, get rid of the Thought Not Seer, draw a card for his troubles. Notably, Majors is he can't cast the Silvergill Adept without either drawing a Merfolk or getting 2 more lands into play.
Back over to Majors, who draws a fetch land. So he doesn't have a Merfolk to actually reveal to Silvergill Adept.
He does not, but he does have a lot of Island Walk creatures.
And John just played, oh my goodness, and John just played an island on the board.
Yeah, that Hallowed Fountain.
Oh goodness.
It's telegraphing.
John, don't do it.
It's telegraphing Path to Exile, but you can only get rid of one of those Lords of Atlantis.
No, I mean, him playing that Hallowed Fountain into this board is going to cost him that just killed him.
Yeah, he looks pretty dead from here.
I missed it when he did it, but Yeah, because now that there's an image and there's a Lord of Atlantis, all of Michael's creatures have Island Walk. Oh, goodness.
Did John have access to gut shots? Okay, he does have gut shots in his sideboard. It's not very good in this matchup. Good in this situation.
I mean, it's possible that if John can gut shot the Phantasmal image and has another path to exile for the Lord of Atlantis, then John's going to have a huge blowout here.
He literally needs Path to Exile Gut Shot.
Yes.
I don't even know if he has 2 cards in his hand.
Playing the island into this board, oh good, has opened a lot of avenues of attack for Michael.
And also, that 2 life might be what actually put him in range. There's just like a lot of bad things happening with that Hallowed Fountain.
Michael will fetch with Scalding Tarn.
I think Majors is thinking about that exact line. He's like, am I going to get gut shotted here? Because that would make me look really bad if I get gut shotted here.
But it has to be gut shot plus path.
Right.
Michael will fetch for basic island. It's only one-time use, but that's not going to matter. And Michael will pass the turn. A lot of respect here for Pellman.
Oh, wow.
And John just passes back.
Another Lord enters the hand for Majors.
The Lord does mean he can reveal the Silvergill Adept, draw a card. He draws another Lord of Atlantis. These double blue cards, all right, I will give some credit to Choke here. It's keeping Michael's hand down.
Right. You know, casting this Lord here means that he's not able to cast another Lord next turn. Do you think that Majors is unaware that John controls an island? Do you think that the fact that John has cast a Choke has just blinded Majors to the reality that his creatures are unblockable?
It's feeling that way right now. I understand Majors not wanting to go for the full alpha attack, but I think if Majors realized that John had played an island into this board, he would be swinging something.
Right.
Cast another Lord of Atlantis, and now here's the whole team. And nothing in John's hand. Michael Majors takes the game 2 games to 0.
I definitely would not always realize that my Choke opponent had an island in play. To be fair.
To be fair, yeah. Wow. But nonetheless, Merfolk looking really strong against Bant Eldrazi there.
Yeah, that was an impressive showing. You know, he's playing this deck because of the Eldrazi deck's existence. Notably, Pellman's hand not very strong. No fast mana in it, kept on 7. It's the kind of hand that I was mulliganing every time. So I feel like that was probably a mulligan.